The Russians have demonstrated their willingness to use missiles from submarines. They did it from the Black Sea
Yes,
into Syria, and now the Russians are here in the Mediterranean.
they absolutely are. And we're watching them very, very closely.
Each blip represents a potential contact. Wave returns, floating debris, marine life, or the submarine they're hunting.
Picture this: a massive C-17 Globemaster lined up at just 500 feet over open ocean, its nose nearly vertical, fighting ground effect turbulence like a skyscraper in a storm. Beneath it, a nuclear submarine rides the swells unseen, while a tiny, rigid hull boat waits off its starboard side for the splash. The camera captures all three platforms locked into one moment: the water churning, the radar pinging, and the tension of whether a single package will land on target. Before we move on, I will like you to subscribe to the channel and like the video. How do you track a submarine that doesn't want to be found when the patch of ocean you're searching is as wide as Russia itself? That was the exact challenge when the USS Henry M. Jackson slipped beneath the surface and cut communications. This boat, a ballistic missile submarine, exists to vanish. Once it leaves port, silence is its shield. No radio chatter, no radar signature, nothing for satellites to pick up. It just drifts, holding nuclear warheads in the quietest corner of the sea it can find. For those tasked with making contact again, the sheer emptiness of the ocean stretches into an almost impossible problem. A steel cylinder moving somewhere inside a liquid desert millions of square miles wide. The Henry M. Jackson didn't wait to be located. Crews searching for it had to consider tides, currents, and the submarine's own minimal propulsion. Even with conservative estimates, the vessel could drift miles from its last recorded point in a matter of hours. The ocean presented no obvious markings to help. Every wave crest looked the same, and sonar pings were out of the question if silence was to remain unbroken. What's left then is the watchful scanning of radar screens, filled not with clean, tidy dots of a single target, but with a wall of static. On a console lit green in a dark cabin, faint echoes flashed like rain on constant replay.
Factor in that both platforms are moving, the ocean's doing its own thing, and suddenly, this looks less like a military operation.
And there is something else about the USS Florida. It is always ready for U.S. Special Forces, for Navy SEALs, their weapons already on board.
The patterns forming blips that could be anything. A flock of seabirds, a swell peaking in the wrong way, even metallic debris floating from a distant cargo ship. Among them, one of those flecks could be a submarine's location, but there was no firewall separating truth and noise. That left the ANAP's 133 Maritime Search Radar, a powerful instrument that could project a beam out nearly 250 nautical miles. Its reach was massive, but range alone doesn't solve the problem. The radar operator had to sift through hundreds of returns from that range, and each one was subject to distortion by the atmosphere, the waves below, and even electrical interference from the platform itself. That's why human experience mattered. Machines could show the picture, but they didn't know when a spike in the data should be ignored. Veteran operators learned over years when to toss out the anomaly that looked promising but didn't quite fit. Their judgment pulled the search party forward, slowly tightening the area one sweep at a time. Progress came in increments. One return dismissed, another logged, until the mosaic of dots on screen began shifting from noise toward a definable pattern. Time wasn't a luxury. The Henry M. Jackson could creep north without notice, while analysts chased false angles. At one point, it slipped an extra 4.2 nautical miles northeast from its predicted path, forcing the search team to recalculate every overlay and prediction model they had drawn. It seemed small by human reckoning, not much farther than the span of a long-distance run, but on the open ocean, that margin meant replotting entire search grids at risk of wasting hours. Each recalculation meant extending fatigue for operators already staring at screens for most of the day.
Distinguishing a submarine's minimal surface profile from wave returns requires the kind of pattern recognition that comes only from years of experience scanning hostile waters.
One of them already marked warshot loaded. And it turns out that every one of these torpedoes is tested multiple times before it's put into place on a guided missile submarine.
The task pressed against near impossibility: to distinguish a submarine hidden beneath 3,000 meters of salt water from the constant clutter of waves and broken cargo required patience on the edge of frustration. Still, as track history built up, one faint signal repeated where noise should have vanished. Slowly, confidence grew until confirmation finally came. The Henry M. Jackson's trace on the instruments was real. Sensors slewed to narrow beams, fixes aligned, and the submarine again had a point in the blue charting of the search. It was an achievement, but only the first step. The next hurdle wasn't hiding. It was whether an aircraft could deliver a package from the sky within reach of that exact spot on the moving sea. What happens when an aircraft that weighs over 400,000 pounds tries to drop a package that weighs just 50 pounds, and not just over open land, but within meters of a moving submarine? That was the task facing a C-17 Globemaster III as it descended to its lowest and riskiest phase of flight. Final approach. Altitude, 500 feet. Speed, just over the stall boundary. Location, rolling seas on an open stretch of the Pacific Ocean with no landmarks, no runway, and only coordinates to guide them in. The crew knew that flying a C-17 close to the surface of the ocean was a fight against physics itself. Ground effect lifted the aircraft unpredictably, creating pockets of air that made its massive wings feel unsteady. Added turbulence from oceanic winds tossed the plane slightly off balance, forcing the pilot to hold constant corrections on the yoke just to keep a steady line. Every second counted, because if the Globemaster couldn't maintain a stable path during the drop,
Dive.
A camera shows the submarine disappearing under the water's surface.
In 30 seconds, they'll know if the United States military just invented a new way to keep submarines at sea indefinitely.
the precision of the release would vanish. The drop wasn't just about the aircraft. It was a three-part coordination act between giants and a speck. The submerged submarine maneuvered just beneath the surface, holding position while also accounting for ocean currents. Nearby, a small, rigid-hull inflatable boat darted forward to serve as the recovery platform, ready to snatch the package after splashdown. Overhead, the C-17 carried the precious cargo positioned at the exact release point in the cargo bay. 3 moving parts, 3 separate dynamics, each one shifting by the second under the influence of waves and wind. The pilot had to fly at 120 knots, no faster and no slower. Faster, and the load risked overshooting by hundreds of meters. Slower, and the Globemaster's stability would collapse toward stall. That narrow corridor of speed left little tolerance for error. Aerodynamics became as critical as navigation. Holding altitude required simultaneous adjustments of thrust and pitch while evaluating the reliable sweep of the altimeter. The aircraft wasn't built to fly at treetop level, let alone sea level. And then came the mathematics of delivery. The package leaving the aircraft wouldn't fall straight down. It would inherit the forward momentum of the plane, be pushed sideways by crosswinds, and then track further off course depending on how far the submarine drifted at its slow but steady pace. Each calculation mattered. The crew factored wind speed at release altitude, ocean swell direction, and the glide path of the package as gravity and drag worked together to shift it forward and sideways.
Radio coordination between 3 platforms pushes the limits of what humans can accomplish with voice communications.
We won't go any further, but you're literally standing 10 to 20 feet from an operational nuclear reactor right now.
Adjusting by only a few seconds of release time could decide whether the package landed within sight of the boat or vanished into endless blue. Inside the aircraft, the loadmaster prepared for the countdown. He stood beside the release mechanism, headset on, eyes fixed on the digital clock synced with the flight computer. 10 seconds to release. The hum of the turbines cut through the cabin, making every second drag as the crew kept steady eyes on their readings. 5 seconds. The loadmaster braced. 3, 2, 1. He triggered the mechanism. The drop demonstrated something far bigger than hitting a target on water. It showed that a submarine on patrol doesn't need to return to port for every resupply, even when operating in remote areas. A package delivered from the sky becomes more than a test. It's a proof of concept for extending missions. Longer patrols mean a stronger nuclear deterrent, because boats like the Henry M. Jackson can stay hidden longer. In simple terms, the Navy gained the option to Amazon Prime critical gear to a submarine, A small delivery system suddenly translates into a wide-reaching strategic advantage.